Is it smart for Utah to stay loyal to the Big 12 amidst all the ACC rumors? Let's discuss on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media, where you can follow our show at Locked On Utes today on X. My name is JT Wistricll, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by former Utah Kicker Moose Bingham on today's show. And Moose, let's talk conference realignment. We've already discussed earlier this week on the show that the whole notion that Utah is, going to be going to the ACC was crap. It's not going to happen. But that does raise the question, like, is it smart for Utah to stay loyal to the Big 12? And I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. Number one, more so than anything, at least for right now, of course, with the Big 12, because conference realignment can change things. The ACC has members actively trying to lead. They are suing the conference. There's a lot of craziness there. The Big 12, no one is actively trying to leave at the moment. Of the two, it feels a lot more stable right now for sure. I think there are some fun rivalries and some fun up-and-coming programs in the Big 12. And I think if Utah wants to position themselves in the best position for the next stage of college football, I think the Big 12 is the best place for them currently to do so.
I absolutely agree. It's kind of funny. I was listening to Business Wars. It's a podcast I like because I like entrepreneurship. And in the podcast today, they were talking about how this all started, the conference realignment back in 1997, going through different things that different colleges were doing to position themselves correctly. What Utah's done now is amazing. Utah, in the last conference realignment in around 2009, 2010, them getting to the Pac-12 was a stroke of brilliance because it was supposed to be Texas A&M coming into the Pac-12. And it wasn't supposed to be Utah, and then Texas A&M switched to the SEC in the 11th hour. And Utah filled that spot. And did they do it okay? No. Utah has been brilliant in the Pac-12, and I expect them to do the same thing in the Big 12. So Utah, they are full-fledged members. They're making great money. The Big 12 is positioning themselves to be the third conference, really.
Yes.
And that's what I'm seeing. The ACC is slowly crumbling, and there's some great schools in the ACC that will most likely want to bounce to the Big 12. And the Big 12 may open their arms with glee to welcome a Florida State or a Clemson or one of these other powerhouse schools that could increase the recruiting footprint for their other schools. So I'm excited to see what happens, but the ACC is just grasping at straws at this point. I would yell out, hey, I think USC is coming in, but they wanted something a little less far-fetched, and they've seen Utah hasn't been welcomed with open arms by many of the fan bases. So why not go and just fan that fire a little bit and say, hey, you know what, you've got a great landing spot with us. It'll only cost you a $30, $40 million buyout annually for the next lifetime of your school. But besides that, we're a great conference. But I think that the ACC is a good conference, but I think Utah's in a position to do what they want to do, and that's get into the playoffs, and that's get into the playoffs with a high seed that will allow them to hopefully get into the national championship conversation at the end of the playoffs.
Yeah, as we know, Texas and obviously Oklahoma went to the SEC. Then you get UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington, all going to the Big Ten, the SEC. Those were the best additions made by college conferences. But what were the next best? Clearly what the Big 12 has done, and not just adding Utah. Colorado, whose brand is at an all-time high, it feels like right now, because of Deion Sanders. Arizona and Arizona State both feel like programs with a lot of potential with the right coaches. Well, Arizona had that guy, and then we'll see what can happen there now, but still strong programs there too. And versus you look at the ACC, and this, I'm not trying to disrespect the Cals, the Stanfords, the SMUs, and all of those teams from those world, but they just don't generate the same excitement that those other schools I listed because they haven't had the same amount of recent success as well, or in general, just if you look at some of the more recent history, it just hasn't been as positive. So it definitely feels like the Big 12 is in a big place. You mentioned if the Big 12 could somehow land one of the Clemsons and the Florida States too, like those would be awesome wins for Utah to get too, not just a recruiting footprint down in the Florida State area, even stronger than what's already there with UCF already there, but also even looking over to a place like Clemson, getting more into that South Carolina, North Carolina kind of area like that, I do think would be really good for this Utah brand as well. So it does feel like this Utah team is in a good place, whether the Big 12 expands or not, to continue to get wins against quality opponents. And Utah doesn't have to worry. This is the other huge, biggest thing about like why you stay in the Big 12 and not the ACC. You said it yourself, Moose. Like the ACC is crumbling, and very well, we have no idea what the future of that conference will be in 5 years. The Big 12, I have no doubt it's not crumbling right now. Like, could the other teams leave for a super conference or something crazy like that just because that's what conference realignment is? Sure. But it's not like the ship is going to sink like the Pac-12 did and the ACC's currently is.
Well, never say never. That's what I've learned, because the Pac-12 was in a position to be that third conference and even overtake the Big Ten at certain points. But if you have bad leadership, that's going to definitely ruin it. But I love the Big 12's leadership right now. I love the direction they're taking. I love how they go from coast to coast and how they're trying to really bring in a lot of value for the fans, for everyone. And really, Utah, like I said, they've set themselves up perfectly. They don't have to play Florida State. They don't have to go to Virginia Tech and have Enter Sandman. They don't have to do all of these different things. They have a pretty clear path to say, hey, we are the number one team in the country, and then have a pretty clear path to do what they need to do. I would rather be 13-0 going into the playoffs than limping in from an SEC schedule 10-2. Utah, they have an opportunity to do something special year one in the Big 12, and I don't think they're ever going to want to leave after that.
Yeah, I don't think so either, barring them getting that, super conferences and all the things of that. I like you said right away, never say never, but Utah feels like they're in a great place to succeed in the current landscape, especially because all they have to do even this year is just do something do things they've already done, win a conference championship game, and you will do something you've never done, make a college football playoff. So that opportunity will be available to Utah year in and year out. With the field expanding, that's more opportunities as well. So really fired up about what's ahead for this Utah football team. And you mentioned they have a chance to win it in year one, Moose. So you obviously went over the show schedule, because that is what we're going to be talking about in the second segment, how realistic of a chance it is this Utah team can win in year one. Because I've been seeing a lot of Big 12 fans, whether it's in the comments or online, saying, oh, Utah, they were awful last year and they lose 4 to 5 games a year, and all these random crappy comments that we want to dive into and dispel about why Utah can and will contend year one in the Big 12. We'll be discussing that in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you all about our great friends at Gametime. With killer last-minute deals, all-in-price views from your seat, and their low-price guarantee, Gametime truly takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets, because Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app, they actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. And there are so many lovely features, like those flash deals where you save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event, zone deals where you can save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. Well, also Seat View, where you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. With Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You can truly take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College. It's capital LO, and all of college is capitalized all together, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that code, Locked On College. You can download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Moose, as I said, there's been a lot of talk I've seen from Big 12 fans who I just don't think are familiar with Utah, or they don't have the respect for the Utah brand, that have really been kind of dumping on their year one Big 12 championship chances. And I think what a lot of these fans are missing is, number one, the amount of injuries this team suffered last year. Number two, the amount of players who have won a conference championship coming back. There are 12 players on this Utah team that played a key role in one of the two recent Pac-12 championships that Utah's won in 21 and 22. And there are 6 players that played a key role on both of those teams coming back to Utah. So these are groups that have been incredibly successful. And I love this misnomer about like how weak the Pac-12 is and things of that nature, when the Pac-12 the last couple of years has been incredibly good, where Oregon and Washington just missed out on the college football playoff, just produced quarterbacks who were selected in the top 15 of the NFL draft. The Pac-12 was really strong, and Utah was among the best multiple years and would have been right there. I mean, they were 8-4 and lost to all really good teams without having several of their starters, including Cam Rising, who's only going to go down as one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the Utah football program.
Whoa. They lost 4 games. Let's be real here. Any team, it was crazy. Last year, I thought the whole team was injured. But if you look at the Big 12 right now, there are some good teams. Like, I like Oklahoma State a lot. I think Texas Tech is a tough team to play. I think Iowa State's on the rise, and Kansas. Colorado is just kind of a confusing school because they're either going to be like a national championship conversation or 4 wins. Houston – Houston, you've got a lot of great things coming out of Houston. UCF, both of those are hotbed recruiting areas where you're just like, okay, Texas and Florida, it's amazing. BYU, that's always a tough game for Utah no matter what. TCU, we're looking in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and that is a hot recruiting bed. West Virginia and Cincinnati, a little bit to be desired from those two. Same with Arizona State and Arizona. But with the transfer portal, I can't accurately say this team's going to be good or that team's going to be good because things change so quickly. You can get one player, one quarterback, one whatever, and the whole season changes. Where we used to be able to sit and be like, oh, this kid's coming up, that kid's coming up. Utah landed another quarterback recruit today from the JUCO ranks. So you're seeing a lot of changing, but I think Utah has set themselves up perfectly to have success in year one. Like you said, we've got 12 players that have a lot of experience. But then when you add Dorian Singer, you add Tayshawn Lyons, you add Carson Ryan, you add Isaac Wilson and Isaiah Garcia and John Henry Daly and Kareem Johnson. Like, there's a lot of people that have been added that were successful at their previous schools as well. So it's not just, hey, these guys were here on the team before. They're adding the pieces that can conform into what Kyle Whittingham has established as an elite culture, and these guys will all buy in because they know if they do well on this Utah team, all that's going to be coming their way is dollar signs and NFL glory.
Very, very true. And this is a Utah team too, for people who are like, well, sure, they won back-to-back conference championships back in 21 and 22. Well, just last year, this Utah defense, top 5 run defense, an incredible mark. And if you have questions because Utah is swapping some players out in the secondary out there, can I understand them? Sure. Look at Utah's history for how they replace their defensive backs. Morgan Scalley, Sharif Shaw do an incredible job developing talent. And year in and year out, you see this secondary as an elite unit. We know this Utah team always is going to run the ball and be physical. There are questions along the offensive line because of who they have to replace and lost. But even last year when the offensive line wasn't as strong as it had been the 2 previous years, still a pretty dang good unit. And I mentioned Cam Rising. When you have a quarterback like that who has won games not once but twice against Caleb Williams, that I put a lot of stock into that too. This is also a Utah team, and Big 12 fans, this is the thing they will really soon learn, is incredibly tough to beat at home. The advantage that Utah has in Rice-Eccles Stadium will be the strongest home field advantage in the conference. And I think there are some fans rolling their eyes when I say that, but here's the truth. Altitude is a big thing. And I guess in a way, BYU can claim that too over there, but I don't think teams realize. Just ask that Florida team. What happened? They went out there and they're making these uncharacteristic mistakes because it's hard to play in the altitude. You get fatigued. Even though Utah's stadium isn't one of the largest in terms of fan capacity, ask anyone how loud it gets up there. It gets crazy. It literally took Bo Nix, one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and a depleted Utah roster in order for the Ducks to finally be the team that for the first time since 2018 beat this Utah team at home. So home field advantage, a loaded roster. I love what I'm seeing with this Utah squad this fall.
Yeah, I didn't believe in altitude for a while, to be honest with you.
You and me both till I moved out here, till I moved out there.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, I've been running a 5K. I don't think you can tell, but I'm a good-looking young lad.
Yeah.
Real good-looking, rockin' bod for sure. But I've been running a 5K around the mountains in my house, and it takes me about 30 minutes every single day. Then I went down to Arizona State last week, and I ran a 5K in 27 minutes. And then I went out to Cincinnati, and I ran it in just under 25. And I'm like, the altitude makes a major difference. I don't care what anyone says. This is brutal. And Utah's going to take that advantage. It's going to be huge. I kind of want to go against what you said with losing all these old linemen. We did lose some linemen, but Johnny Maya in the middle, I think that is going to be big. We did lose a phenomenal lineman to Texas A&M, don't get me wrong. But I don't know if he was going to start over Johnny, to be honest with you. I think he saw greener pastures. Tanoa Togiai, I think he's really good, and he's just a junior. Caleb Lomu, he's a redshirt freshman. Michael Mokofisi, he's a redshirt junior. And then Spencer Fano, he's a true sophomore. We do have a young offensive line, but it's not that they're not inexperienced. These guys are all ballers, and they're all ready to go, and they've learned what they needed to do. Losing Keaton Bills, that is big. But all of these guys can come in and make their own mark, and I think their ceiling maybe even higher.
Yeah, I think the Caleb Lomus and the Spencer Fano, their ceiling is undoubtedly higher. I just think there are question marks until you go out there and prove that you can do it. That's where I don't have huge questions about this Utah offensive line. I think there are questions because of Spencer Fano's up and down play at times last year, because of a Michael Mokofisi's up and down play last year, because I haven't seen Caleb Lomu live in a college football game. I like this unit. Jim Harding has a history of developing strong offensive linemen, but that's where the questions to me still percolate, and it's going to be interesting to see how this unit performs. I think they're going to do very well this fall, and I expect them to look a lot more like 22 rather than they did in 23, even in 23, as I said, it was still pretty good. I just thought, when the offensive line awards came out, Utah wasn't on that. In the past years, they'd been on those lists. I expect that to change again this fall because I do expect Lomu and Fano to pan out, but until we see them do it, that's just something we're going to have to wait on. But Moose, something we don't, or did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I think one of the underrated things that's happened in that staff, in that room, is the addition of Isaac Asiata. I think he's done an incredible job recruiting. I think he's been an incredible mentor to these young kids. Mm-hmm. And he went from being a policeman to doing like 5 different jobs. And the whole time, every time I talk to him, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I just want to get back with Harding and I want to get back coaching. I'm like, Nike, bro, just do it. And he finally has it, and I think it's going to pay some massive dividends on the offensive side of the ball to have someone that's been in the NFL, that was a top lineman in the country, that has been drafted, and say, this is the way it's done, and this is how we do it as an offensive line unit. And he's going to show them the way so that they will just eat that up, and I'm excited to watch that as well.
I'm excited too. It's going to be fun to see how that unit performs this fall. And I want to talk about summer workouts in a moment, but Moose, I got to know, you mentioned you're training for 5Ks. Do you got some eligibility left? Are you looking at NIL opportunities to come back this fall?
Absolutely. The money I've been seeing, I'm like, whoa, you're getting paid how much? I'm about to quit my job and find a different birth certificate or something. I would love to come back. Don't get me started.
I'm excited to see the McLovin ID pull out for your fake birth certificate or whatever you're going to try to do for that as well. Make sure you send that to the show as well.
I am McMoosin.
Yes, exactly. But one thing I did want to talk to you about, Moose, is, by the time this releases, May 30th, we're very close to June. That means summer workouts. You've been through summer workouts. Well, I want to give you a cue, and you've been through summer workouts with this Utah team too. I want you to clue everyone in. What is it like to be a University of Utah football player going through summer workouts up on the hill?
So everyone has this vision of being a college football player. They're like, you run out of the tunnel. Swoop is in front of you on a motorcycle. Kyle Whittingham is beside you. Life is great. The co-eds are in the cheerleading section. The muss is roaring. And that is about 0.00001 of your college football experience. Do you know what most of it is? Summer workouts. You're going to be running every freaking stadium stair, and you'll be naming them. You're like, there's Jerry, there's Gary, you're just like running endlessly. You're throwing up on the sidelines. It's super fun. And you're doing it at 6 a.m. because heaven forbid that sun hits your skin and you're just like, oh. The other thing is you'll go down, I think it's Foothill Park. You'll run that hill. That's always fun. And it's not like that's the beginning, middle, or end. Like, this is just a continuous cycle of Groundhog's Day of just getting your body beat up, getting bigger, faster, and stronger. But the problem is, at Utah, there's competition at each and every spot. So summer workouts, even though they're brutal, even though I hated them, I knew that there was someone coming from my spot, and I was gunning for someone else's spot. So if you don't do those little things right, it's not going to end up well for you. Coach Witt would always say, you can do anything for 3 minutes. And I was like, okay, you can, but I don't want to. I'm exhausted and I hate it. But with this, you're going to see that I think Doug Elisai is one of the best in the country. He does a great job preparing these young men. He surrounds himself with phenomenal strength coaches, and Utah has the resources to take their team to the next level. He's always researching, always finding the right things. One of the most underrated coaches on the entire staff is a strength coach, and Witt found him one that believes in his vision, executes it, and Doug knows exactly what Kyle Whittingham wants. But summer workouts are just brutal because you're like, I want to go do a fun 4th of July thing. And then you're like, no, I don't because I need to work hard. It's just a small point in these young men's lives. But I think Utah sets people up not just for the season, but for life through their summer workouts in Q3.
Yeah, they do an exceptional job getting everyone ready. I will. Have you ran every step in Rice-Eccles Stadium?
Yes. Well, not the new edition. So.
Old one, yeah. So I mean, yeah. But you think you would assume the new guys have everyone up there now?
Yeah, I don't see someone that wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And I think what they're doing is just taking the longest, largest sections now and making it just snaking through. But you're going to get better. You're going to get more fit. I remember there was a player we had, Carlos Lozanos. He, do you remember him at all? He was this.
I was just being the good host thing where I like smile and nod.
Thanks, yeah.
Conversation going. So yeah, thanks for calling me out, bud.
Sorry, Carlos. He came from JUCO. He was probably 6'8", probably like 400 pounds. Mm-hmm. And when he got into the University of Utah strength program, he lost about, I want to say 50 pounds pretty quick. Getting into it, he was looking great. And we're like, Carlos, you're going to be an absolute dog. And then he went home for like a week and put on 30 pounds. We're just like, how many tacos did you eat, dude? What happened here? Because there's no freaking way. I don't understand. But what you see is that the work that you put in can get taken away very quickly. So Witt, when he has designed these schedules with Doug Elisai, he makes it so that the guys are putting forth that work so that you're going to be crescendoing into the season and even more so into the playoffs. So I'm excited to see what they do this summer. Even though it is hard, it's going to make it a much better product on the field if these guys buy in.
It is. And, credit these guys for going through it because what you're describing does not sound like something I would want to buy into right now. So I respect the commitment to the process. Moose, before I get you out of here, I got to ask you one thing. What was the individually for you, did you think was the most hardest workout in the summer you ever went through at Utah?
It wasn't in the summer. We had this workout before, I think it was before we got let out for a small 2-week break. And we used to call it FUBAR, and you can look that up, but they told us we couldn't call it that anymore. So we called it Red Zone Friday. And I think it was 2 hours in the indoor where they'd lock the gates and they'd bring in a DJ. It was Snoop and Dog, Ama-Ah's dad would come in, and he would just be blasting this music, and you would have 2 hours straight of competition They had like a throw up area where they're like, get it done and then get back in. And you were just kind of FUBAR messed up beyond all recognition. And that was one of the worst experiences of my entire life. Because
that sounds brutal.
Yeah. And they're like, do this and you'll go through it and you'll be ready to go and get done what you need to when you come back for summer training. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to come back for summer training after this. But I was like, look, I run 3 steps when I get on the field. At most, it's a kickoff and I'll jog another 20. Give me a break. I'm dying. But yeah, no, I think Utah does a great job mentally preparing you. But every single workout, it's a mental grind because you're going to go through harder things going through the workouts, going through the training than you ever will when you're on the field. And so you're going to drop to the level of your training. And that's what Utah does in a better way than most college football programs that I've seen, is they create that unity. They create that culture through the weight room, through the coaches, and help you get to hopefully another championship.
Yeah, the standard is high, and it's not just one that goes from fall camp all the way through December, January. It's one that continues in spring camp and the off season and all of the summer workouts, obviously, that it entails there. So it is a grind. And Moose, we always appreciate you stopping by, sharing those stories. You know, you said you're a fan of entrepreneurs. You're an entrepreneur yourself. You got a lot going on, my man. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things I've got is recruiting for parents. Recruiting for parents. It's a online course that teaches parents the recruiting process so they can understand that. If you're a coach of any kind, we've got Prep War Room, which does communication, roster management, equipment management. You can basically be your own general manager of your little daughter's soccer team, moving people around on the depth charts, drag and drop and print it off, and sending text messages to the whole entire team. And yeah, I got the Utah Preps podcast as well. I should probably stop. I've got about 29 other things I'm doing, but just a lot of fun things that I do in my life each and every day.
Well, it's an exciting one. That's why we always appreciate you taking a little bit of time to come talk with us, Moose. Great stuff as always. Thank you, my friend.
Oh, it's been a blast. I can't wait till next time.
Yeah, it'll be soon. I can guarantee that, especially with more good stories like that. Appreciate you delivered for everyone and along the way as well, too. But so thank you again, Moose. That is going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow talking more things Utah football. Actually, a fun episode. We're going game by game, predicting Utah's schedule. So we hope you'll join in and tune in on tomorrow's show. We'll see you then.